Hi, and welcome to the Beehive. This is my 1.35k science per minute megabase that uses 378 1-1 trains to transport resources around. It uses a hexagonal grid with modular cells. It was built almost entirely in vanilla. I just use a power armor mode towards the end because laying down 15,000 tiles of concrete at a time is a huge pain in the ass with the vanilla power armors. But yeah, apart from that, entirely vanilla. It was inspired by Zisto's Meiosis series from 3 years ago now, and over the last roughly 2 years and 300 hours in a creative world, I just built small designs and improved them and iterated over them, and now we're here. As far as I know, this is the only megabase that uses exclusively 1-1 trains. I haven't been able to find anything else that uses this criteria, so if anyone knows of one, I'd be glad to see it actually. Here's a quick glance at what 378 trains look like. And just as a fair warning, this video is not well prepared. I am not someone who does well at making well organized videos, so it's going to be a lot of rambling, and I just have a bunch of bullet points that I want to go to. So, alright, first things first, because everyone asks me about these lights, yes, they are pretty, yes, they are inspired by Zisto's recursion series, again, and the way you set them up is extremely simple. You just connect a rail signal to a lamp, set the lamp to use colors, and enable if anything is superior to 0, and that's literally it. That's all you need to do to make those work. Alright, so onto the iron plate cell and the basic workings of the base. So the idea is that for every production cell, the input stations are specific to the cell and the output stations are generic. What that means is that every input station has specific trains dedicated to it that will output and then go to refill as soon as they are empty. And they go to refill at generic stations, which means every output station in the base, well, every output station for each type of resource shares the same name. So they just close when the buffer level drops below the average buffer for this type of station in the base. And so the trains just distribute themselves to the closest open station, and it allows me to, like if I want more iron plate production, I can just take a blueprint, copy the module and paste it somewhere else, and it will connect to the network just on its own. I just have to give it a few input trains, and that's it for the setup. This input station is a design of mine. Some of you might remember it. I posted it on Reddit a few months back, maybe a year now. That was a while ago. It uses sideways splitters because inserters inserting on sideways splitters insert sort of on both sides at once, which means you can increase the throughput by a lot. And this unloader, I haven't tested it fully in 0.17, but in 0.16 it outputted more than 5 blue belts, and I think that's still the case with 0.17 belts. Output stations, same thing, same trick with the sideways splitters. There's an extra Matsuri balancer, because this design doesn't quite keep all the chests balanced. And so yeah, this is capable of loading over 4 blue belts of input into the chest, so that's pretty nice. And then the 6 output belts are distributed between the 2 stations, such that if they're both loading at the same time, each of them gets 3 input belts, so they can buffer the entire output of the cell. And if one of them is full, then its belts fill up, and the other one can fill at its maximum capacity. So it's nice. Then for the output station, there's also a refueling station. There's a train up there, up here, this train, that comes by every so often. Whenever the chest runs low on fuel, the train comes by to refuel it. And yeah, oh yeah, and there's this system that is what allows me to shut down the station when it's below the average. So this calculates the percentage of the buffer, like how full the buffer is as a percentage, and then it outputs that to the grid. Well, it averages that with all the other stations of that type, outputs that to the grid, and closes if it's below the average. And that's pretty much it for the function amount of one cell. And this this buffer setup lets me have this display, which is really nice. It's written in Braille because Braille is the most compact alphabet that I know about, and I didn't want to make a bigger one. And it's very convenient for debugging the base. Like, you can tell at a glance when something's not working right, when a buffer is running really low at some point or something. Being in the yellow is normal, it's just a consequence of how the stations are designed. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, that station design also means that my train schedules are really simple. For every single resource train in the base, which is most of them, that's literally the train schedule for all of them. So that's really easy. Yeah, so that's it for the iron plates. Copper plates, obviously, exact same design as the iron plates. And then steel. I decided to use to go straight from iron ore to steel plates because in a megabase like this, you actually use more than half of your iron plates to make steel. So that allowed me to just make it more compact, eliminate a few trips, like a few trains. Yeah. Here's the sun rigs, which is like laughable because you really don't need that much. That's all you need for 1.35k per unit science, and I didn't even upgrade it because I really don't need to. Here's the crude oil module, which is a pain in the ass because at this high throughput, the water input actually starts to become a problem because you need a lot of water. So there has to be just a lot of pumps. And you might think that I just put pumps everywhere that I needed them, but actually I kind of, like, you might think I just slapped pumps everywhere, but that's how many I actually need for it to run smoothly. Let's see. Oh yeah, obviously there's selective cracking, so it cracks light oil only if its light oil output is full, and it cracks heavy oil only if the lubricant output is full. Here's where they get their water, so there's just 2 small stations with pumps directly onto the water, so that reloads really fast. That's really efficient. Electronic circuits. Pretty simple cell. Again, first one to use 2 different inputs, so there's 1 train for each of them. In later stations, sometimes I use 1 train for multiple resources, especially in science, because for those the throughput is low enough that I don't really need more trains, so it's a bit of a waste to just have more trains on the network. It's already, like, the network is not congested, but there's already a lot of trains, so it's better not to add excessive trains. Then yeah, that layout, again, design of mine. It's not too complicated, it's just a bit of going around. It's not as compact as it could be, but I think it works fine. And also, a little fun fact, I don't know if you can see that on with YouTube compression. If you look on the right, those top assemblers have finished almost 2 million circuits each, and those bottom ones have finished over 1.7 million each, which, if you do the math, these 12 assemblers have the 20 million green circuit achievement by themselves, so that's fun. There's the plastic bars with a coal patch right in the middle. Oh, I'm actually not mining this patch. Well, whatever. It's not like it's gonna run out anyways. Again, a bit wavy, but fairly simple design. This actually is something that I really like. It's, I think, the most compact way to switch an item from one side of the belt to the other. It's only 2x2, and it works with any type of item. Advanced circuits. Yeah, that was okay. That one was fun to design. There's like a lot of people when they design big advanced circuit modules, or like just factories, because the circuits and plastic bars are in 1-to-1 ratio. It makes a lot of sense to put them both on the same belt. But what happens is actually that if you want to do that, you need to have the circuit and plastic stations close to each other, which with my design means basically that I need to have them down here, which takes up more space because having two stackers here automatically takes a lot of space, and then merging the belts together, even though it's not complicated, merging 6 belts to 6 belts and having 12 belts of output actually takes up a lot of space. So to save space, I separated the two, and the circuits go in to those blue belts, go in, and go around here, and then in through the red belts. And the plastic does the opposite. It goes through the blue belts in the other direction, and then here switches to red belts. So that allows me to have a full blue belt of each resource to each, well, half a blue belt to each layout. And actually, I think this design consumes like 97% of its input or something, which is really good. And as you can see, it produces a lot of circuits. I think it's over 4 blue belts. Let me look at my... oh yeah, one thing I need to talk about. This little design is something I'm really proud of. It's simply 2 stack inserters connected to each other, but if you set the right settings to them, you can make it so they perfectly compress a belt every time, like constantly. Unless the belt backs up, like you can see here. If the belt is backed up, then it's gonna desync a bit and it's gonna leave gaps. But I assume that if the belt is backed up, it means like that gaps are not a big deal. And this one you can see is flowing completely full. If you enable the debug, you can see there's no gaps in there, despite having only 2 inserters. And yeah, let me just show you that design real quick. Where is it? This is the very organized part of the... Did I not? There we go. Alright, so you just need the back inserter to have a stack size of 8 and enable when something is equal to 8. And then this one reads and contains in hold mode and a stack size of 10. And with these exact settings, it will compress one side of the belt every time with 2 inserters. So that's nice. Alright, that is that. Sulfuric acid cell. It's really small. It's really like it's aside from the stone bricks, it's the cell that I optimized the least. I think I got up to like 600 signs per minute before upgrading it the first time, and then I just built this in like 5 minutes and said that's plenty. I think I have like way too much battery production, but yeah, whatever. You really don't need that much sulfuric acid. Let's go to the processing units. This was a fun cell too. This actually produces almost a full blue belt of blue circuits. I think it's over 2500, maybe close to 2600 blue circuits per minute. It uses 18 blue belts of green circuits as input, and it was pretty fun to design because one blue belt of green circuits is eaten entirely by 3 assemblers. So that requires a lot of belt weaving, and these ones actually weave under the beacons and around to reach the further ones. So yeah, that was fun. Red science. Yeah, so this is, sorry, that's blue science. Red and green science. So this is the first station that I'm showing that has double input trains, because as you can see, it's like the base is running at full speed right now, and that is how fast the trains need to go. Like, it's been there for maybe 20 seconds and it's still half full. So yeah, it really doesn't make sense to separate the two. if you're just gonna send a train every 2 minutes or something. Pretty simple design. Red and green science are not really a big challenge. And then the output station. Blue science, pretty simple as well. Again, one train for all the inputs, because that's more than enough. Just one assembler of sulfur, because, yeah. Let's go over purple science. So, purple science was a bit of a challenge. And when I say a bit of a challenge, I mean it's still a huge... it's not a problem, but it's one thing I wish I took time to fix, but, you know. Because purple science requires so many rails, and because rails require so many base resources, the steel trains, I need to have a lot of them, and I need them to have big output. And same thing for the stone, and same thing for the stone bricks, which means I need 4 different input stations. So this one has 3 different outputs, and they're not very low throughput, which means, and mostly there's only room for 2 trains in this stacker. So sometimes, as you can see, there's just no train in here, which I really don't like. The base is designed such that there should always be a train at every station, at every input station, and the train serves as a buffer. But it still runs fine, it still runs at full speed, so that's not too much of a problem. But yeah, and yeah, if this oil patch wasn't right there, or if I was willing to build over oil patches, which wouldn't be that big of a problem, but you know, I could have an extra input stations or 2 here, and that wouldn't be a problem, but yeah, whatever. Yellow science, again, nothing particularly special. Just a lot of different assemblers in sequence. Low density structures, oh yeah, so yeah, nothing special about low density structures, just a lot of different input stations, a lot of resources going into that, but the big thing here is this batch of coal, this batch of 8.8 million coal. That used to be like 12.5 million coal, and that I wanted to just get rid of it, basically. I wanted to complete the modules, have the path go through here, and I tried for, like, I don't know, maybe 5-10 hours to just get rid of it. That's why there's speed modules still in all the mining drills. And I had it set up so they'd all go to, like, I had a bunch of bots taking the coal and putting it into request chests, and then every once in a while I pass by and just destroy every, like, 200 request chests full of coal. But, like, even after hours of doing that, that barely made a dent in the coal, and since I was researching science already at that point, like, every 30 minutes I get 10% more coal to mine out, so I just gave up, and that's my coal input now. So yeah. Rocket fuel, nothing particularly complicated. Again, just a really simple chain of assemblers. RCUs, same thing. Now on to the silos. So the silos are actually interesting. First of all, I really like this design. It's very simple, it's very symmetrical, I find it very satisfying. And the chests have enough buffer so that they can build the rocket in one go. And then refill it before it launches again. So obviously 2 rockets, because as everyone who built a Megabase knows, 1 rocket silo is not enough to get 1k science per minute. And then mini assemblers here. Mini factories here to make the satellites. Accumulators and solar panels are built here because I don't use them for the rest of the base, I use nuclear power. And yeah, for the trains, there's a huge tragedy that played here, which is that if you have the same sequence of like intermediary production as I have, and you require these specific items to make the satellite, you can fit everything you need to make one satellite into one train wagon, and it fits perfectly. Like, it's the exact right number of stacks of each item, which is great. Honestly, that's like poetry to me. But the problem is, if you do that, there's some synchronization problems where one resource gets emptied first, and yeah, I mean, long story short, it just doesn't quite work because the train schedules get a bit mixed up. So I had to separate it into two to make it more reliable, and this is probably the most complicated train schedule in the base, which is still not that complicated, so that's nice. Here's the labs. This is the bottleneck for the base. So 1.55k SPM, I use that as my goal because it's 1/2 blue belt running constantly, and I think that's a pretty nice objective to have. This lab layout, I got inspired, well, I lifted it straight up actually, from V45-3000's design, the Factorio dev that many of you might know from his spaghetti base that was posted in one of the Factorio Friday facts. And as you can see, in terms of science production, I let the base run for the last 10 hours, and it just, yeah, it's perfect. I really like these very consistent production graphs. Here's something that is completely unrelated to having almost 400 trains in the base. Here's a quick look at the mold, and I'm not gonna, yeah. This part of the base, as you might be able to tell, is not quite as well organized as the rest of the base, because I tried, and yeah, you know, yeah, okay. Here's something I used a lot, which is the place where I built all of my concrete and refined concrete. It has all it needs to run right here. Well, not all it needs, but I built it on an iron ore patch, so that was one less thing to worry about. And I also made landfill here, because I used that a lot for the next thing we're gonna see, which is the nuclear reactors. So there's 5 of these. Every single one of them was built entirely on landfill, so that I could have the pumps pumping directly into the heat exchangers, because water logistics is one of the biggest challenges of nuclear reactors. So by eliminating that, I made the design much simpler. And then there's a simple control system for the inserters, where they only insert once the steam buffer starts running low, and that way they never waste any steam. If anyone pauses the video and counts the actual number of steam turbines and nuclear reactors and heat exchangers, I don't know why you would do that, but if you did, you'd find that the ratios aren't actually right. This is the right number of heat exchangers and turbines for 12 nuclear reactors, and there's 14 of them. That's because I believe in making excess heat, so that even if it runs at full speed, there's always enough heat to build back up the steam buffer. Because otherwise, if you run at full speed and you have just enough heat to make steam, your buffer might fluctuate a bit, it might drop down, so that can be a bit annoying. So I just decided not to have that issue and have 14 reactors instead. This is also one of the only places in the game, in the base, that I use bots, because using belts here would mess with the timing of the inserters, of the timing of the control system. It's a pain in the ass, and it increases the size of the buffer by a lot. And it would have forced me to make the thing wider, which means more travel time. Anyways, I really don't like using bots for something that builds can solve, but sometimes it just makes more sense, and this is not really an interesting problem to solve with belts, so yeah. Here's the nuclear fuel cell. We've been there already, had a quick glance. Here's my cover X setup. It's a bit weird. It's not like I designed it in such a way that I could make it work, and it does, which is great. but yeah, it's not particularly... it's not the best. I wouldn't recommend you to to copy it, but it works. Oh yeah, and I have one uranium patch that is that's still enough uranium to last for the next 1,000 hours, so that's nice. Let's see what else. Oh yeah. Alright, so the last really cool thing about the base is the interfaces. Because I'm using exclusively 1-1 trains, there's a thing with trains where you can calculate the throughput by taking the number of items they carry and dividing that by the time they take to take a round trip. So if you have outposts that are far from the base, and if you have a megabase, it's likely that your outposts are going to be farther and farther as time goes on. The time is going to increase by a lot, which means to maintain the same throughput, you need way more trains. So for one smelter, if I wanted to have enough trains so that they could go all the way to the outpost and back and maintain the full throughput of the belts, they would need, I would need way more trains, and this stacker can be upgraded to have more trains, but that's not really the issue. I don't want that many trains to run on the main circuit. So instead I separated the train networks. You can see this entire network doesn't actually connect to the base. And so this is the place where trains from the outside that get there or from outposts exchange their ore with trains from the inside. And so these stations, these outside stations, inside stations, close when they're below the average, so that trains can distribute themselves to the closest open one. And these ones actually close when there's a train stopped at it. So that has two benefits. First off, it means trains don't wait for occupied stations. So they distribute themselves to open stations in such a way that there's, unless the station is running at full speed, there's basically always a train in every station, roughly. And the other upside is that every time a station closes, every train that was going to that station repaths automatically. So they're actually, all the trains are constantly repathing and finding the best possible way. And that avoids that issue of trying to go to a station and then waiting 5 seconds to figure out that there's actually another one that's better. And something that helps with that, because if that was the whole system, if there's a train at every station, then every other train would no path, because all the stations would be disabled and the trains would have nowhere to go. So to parry that issue, I have this little setup here. This is a dummy station that has the same name as the input stations, but it has a signal in front of it that is constantly closed. I know it looks open because you can't see the red and the green looks like it's slightly on, but it's actually permanently closed. And so when there's other stations open, the trains are never gonna pass to this one, because the closed signal adds a 500 rails penalty, if I remember correctly. So the trains consider this station to be 500 rails further away than it actually is. And so as long as there's a station open, trains are gonna pass to that one. But if all stations are closed, they are gonna pass to this station, and they're just gonna queue up in here and wait for other stations to open. And so this allows trains to keep coming in if everything is occupied. Like you can see here, those two are waiting here for the stations to open. This is the one time where they can wait 5 seconds to repath, but since that only happens when the station is full, that is not really an issue. Anyways, that was a much too long explanation. This part of the base is really cool. It can transfer over 25 blue belts of throughput, which is also the reason why I use bots and not belts, because, as I said, I don't like using bots any place where belts can do the same job, even if belts are a little worse, but transferring 25 belts from one set of trains to the other and making sure it's balanced and making sure you can get that throughput from many trains and having the room for multiple stations, that's just impossible to do, especially in that space. So bots are very well suited for this job. Right, just one last thing. The Outpost design again was inspired from Zisto, from his recursion series. This is actually the same miner density as the standard straight up mining drill layout, but it has 3 times the belt density. So there's 3 blue belts here, where in the standard layout there will only be 1. So that allows me to have just way more throughput out of one outpost. And I'm limiting this one to 2 belts per 3 because that's more than enough anyways. Like I have copper trains queuing up. I don't need more throughput right now. But if that outpost range is low, then I can add, or like if it gets used up, if the buffer gets used up, I can add additional belts to have additional throughput, which is really nice. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We've gone through the entire base. Let me just give you, there we go, a nice global view. So yeah, thanks for watching my very rambling video. I hope it wasn't too long. Let me check the time. Oh my god, it's too long. Okay. Sorry. Anyways, thanks for watching this far if you have. I'll put a save file in the description. Any comments or questions you have is welcome, and I can probably answer most of them. But yeah, enjoy and go build something big.